Welcome to Generation Teen, and our subject is School to Prison Pipeline. I'm your host, Slewion, a sophomore at Georgetown Prep playing football and basketball, and I'm here on the beautiful Howard University campus at the WHUT Public Broadcasting Studio. But before we begin, let's take a look at this important video on the struggles of Black men in prison.
Yet again, a Black man goes to prison. Yet again, I keep hearing a Black man's dead. They hear the cries of Black families over and over again, yet they still have no remorse. Again and again, we keep hearing about this as our voice grows weary and hoarse. Resting while this goes on, the world becomes a mess. Then Black people in the community will digress. They keep suppressing the Black man, but if you turn all this around, our solution will be found.
Welcome back. Our topic for segment 1 is the causes of the school to prison pipeline. And along with me are my fellow high school hosts, Addison Rose and Isaiah Fields. With me here virtually as guest panelists are Mark Thompson, national civil rights activist, Dr. Stanley Andrisse, a scientist and advocate for the incarcerated, and Jordyn Allen, the president of the Howard University Student Government Association. Panelists, our MJTXL host realized from research that some of the main causes of school to prison pipeline are lack of proper teacher training and student management, discriminating administrators who have harsh and unfair discipline policies who are targeting youth, or drug-related issues among youth. Panelists, do you find this to be true?
I could jump in first, if that's okay with my fellow panelists here. So it is a pleasure to be here with you. Just a quick introduction to myself. So my name is Stanley Andrisse. I am a formerly incarcerated individual with 3 felony convictions. I was sentenced to 10 years in prison, was told by a prosecutor that I had no hope for changing the decisions that I have been making up until that time in my early youth. Fast forward some time, I did my time. I'm now Dr. Stan Andrisse, an endocrinologist, scientist, and professor at Howard University College of Medicine, and also holding some visiting professorships at Georgetown and Imperial College London in the UK. I clearly didn't live up to those expectations of that prosecutor those many years ago. And being from the Ferguson, Missouri area and getting involved in the criminal legal system at a very young age, arrested for the first time at 14, moved into the juvenile system, and then continued to make decisions that led me to sitting in front of that judge looking at 20 years to life in prison and getting hit with that 10. I know very intimately and personally the school to prison pipeline. So I certainly hope to share a little bit more about my experience of what we know of Ferguson in terms of the over-policing and the excessive use of force in policing. Certainly was part of all of that, and that was part of my story in terms of moving into the criminal legal system via the school to prison pipeline.
Let's see what national civil rights activist Mark Thompson thinks.
Pleasure to be here with you, especially on Howard University Television, my alma mater. This is a very serious problem, and all of the factors you all indicated, from what's happening in the classroom, the teacher training, all of the above are factors. And these have been factors for some time, but it's gotten worse. These were factors before the presence of law enforcement in our school systems. These were factors before the over-disciplining of Black young people, Black students, even preschool students, where you have, in this country, you have even preschool students being meted out with discipline that is extremely harsh in the 40s and 50 percentiles if they're African Americans. So we know this is happening disproportionately to us, and it's getting worse. It used to be a lack of educational resources, and then where to take those educational resources to have higher education opportunities and jobs was enough to drive our people toward incarceration. But now, as I said, it starts even earlier at the preschool level with an inability to deal with discipline, with overcrowded classrooms, But fortunately, there are some jurisdictions that are working to address that and change the school to prison pipeline. And I'm looking forward to talking about that.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Panelists, do you think LGBTQ kids have been treated unfairly, and why?
Ms. Allen, will you want to respond?
Hi, everyone. My name is Jordyn Allen. I'm a senior marketing major, political science minor, currently attending Howard University, where I serve as the 62nd Howard University Student Association president. And I would have to agree that there is a discrepancy in the way that LGBTQ students are treated in most academia environments. And I think right now we're just currently in the conversations of what it looks like to create a learning environment that is more conducive to those students. There are a lot of schools across the nation that don't have gender neutral bathrooms, that do not go by pronouncing or announcing pronouns before one speaks. And I think we're just in a culture shift, specifically within the United States, on how we can be more conducive to students within those different groups. And I also would emphasize that the progress for LGBTQ students in different demographics compared to the African-American community is drastically different, right? And so we have to ensure that we're having the conversations within our own community on what that looks like, because homophobia within the Black community is real, and it goes back to a historical nature.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. How do you think our actions toward this cultural change should show?
I think it all comes from a level of education. And a lot of people, specifically within our community, it's not that they're homophobic, it's that this is a very new concept that they are trying to understand, but specifically with how African Americans have been treated historically, but also to add another layer on top of it when it comes to the way that the LGBTQ community has been treated. And so I think shifting the culture is all about a level of education, specifically within our community, but also just broader across the nation.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Panelists, why have Black and Brown students overall been treated unfairly and harshly? Mark Thompson, do you have any words?
That's the history of this country. We have experienced racism and white supremacy since we have been brought here enslaved. And as a matter of fact, the current carceral system, the so-called criminal justice system, the prison system itself, law enforcement, police themselves, all come from the period of enslavement. The original police, the original sheriffs, the original enforcers, the original warrant servers were police officers. That's how it all got started. And imprisonment was a part of that. In fact, the 13th Amendment that supposedly freed us from enslavement, it contains within it, enslavement is abolished except for punishment of a crime.
Addison Rose, do you have any thoughts?
I do. I totally agree with what Reverend Thompson had to say. I do think it does have to do with the history of this country and the suppression and oppression that Black people have had to face. And I don't fully want to put it all on our white counterparts. We do continue to hurt one another. We continue to hold each other to a lower standard, which continues to hurt us. In the classrooms, we are having Black and Brown teachers who are hurting their students, who are putting them in places where they will not be successful. And so we need to have more teachers and resources and administrators who will be helpful, who will support these students and not expect them to fail, who will understand where they come from, who will personally connect with them and their families and what's going on.
Finally, panelists, we hear that second offense charges warrant high punishment and maximum charges. And therefore, is the 3 strikes rule, you're out, no longer active? And is this the reason why more and more young people are going to prison?
I believe so. The incarceration rate is going up. And I do think it's related to the disciplinary actions in the schools. A lot of our young people have direct contact with police at a very early age in life. That's what I was saying about even at the preschool level. And we've seen videos of that even on social media. But I do think there's some jurisdictions, some are even using the American Rescue Act plan funds to try and change that and come up with alternatives, what is known now as restorative justice, coming up with alternatives to deal with discipline, to deal with issues, so as not to bring so many young people in direct contact with law enforcement. Some jurisdictions even getting the police themselves out of schools, which I think is important. I don't think when I was in school, we didn't have police in the school. And I think it's important for young people not to see themselves in that way. I think that conversations like this and elsewhere are awakening the American public and the psyche to the faults of the 3-strike you're out system, to the faults of not giving people second chances, and so many other efforts out here that is showing, as our brother, Dr. Andrisse, has demonstrated himself, that people can come out and have meaningful lives and make meaningful contributions to society.
I would like to add a little bit to that. And my son, William, has decided to make an appearance. So, say hello to my little one. But so, yeah, I can certainly speak to that. As I mentioned, I have 3 felony convictions. They were on separate occasions. I actually got hit with the 3 strikes law in Missouri, and they were, the prosecutor was pushing for 20 years to life in prison. And I got the minimum sentence, which was my mandatory minimum, which was 10 years. And so, I'm very familiar with that personally. And, in terms of the school to prison pipeline, I can remember as young as elementary school, being in detention and suspension and being near expulsion on many occasions. And for really just being a kid and a teenager for the most part, of some of the behavior that I was, doing that led to those detentions and suspensions. There was this inability to really understand me as a person. I mentioned being from Ferguson, Missouri, and we all know that the over-policing, the excessive use of force, and, what the underside or, the additional piece to that is what teachers and authorities feel and think about people from those areas. So my teachers already saw me as a criminal just from being from the place that I was from. And so to the expectation part, I would say that there was never this nurturing of my educational capabilities. So I think one of the solutions is really helping the teachers understand the capabilities and providing training, diversity, equity, and inclusion training to folks in the K through 12 pipeline to help them understand the true potential. Because as the Reverend said, in my case, there was this disbelief of some young Black kid from Ferguson ever doing what I'm doing now. And if we can help authorities, teachers, principals, people in the system, in the educational system, value the life of Black boys and girls, that would be the start.
Now let's go to the video and see what DC Assistant Chief of Police Pamela Willa-Taylor has to say.
Specifically, what I see on an everyday basis, I'm Assistant Chief in charge of the Youth and Family Engagement Bureau. Under that bureau, we have units, you just mentioned missing persons. We have an entire group of detectives that handles that. And I'm going to put these 3 together in a minute. Missing persons, physical and sexual abuse. That includes our human trafficking and internet crimes against children, and the Juvenile Processing Center. That's where every youth that is arrested in the District of Columbia has to come to our processing center. Typically, the kids are running away for whatever reason. And Mr. LaFleur, I definitely agree with you that there's some untreated trauma in a lot of these cases, in which, again, you may not even realize that you're undergoing. And as African Americans, we're shunned for seeking out treatment. That should be something that should be your first response, to be able to seek out treatment once you've identified that you've undergone some type of trauma.
We'll be right back after this message.
Kids with hard lives at home turn to drugs because sometimes it's our parents we can't even trust. I'm talking about the abusive ones, the ones that make life hard. Your child looking down and you show no support, they're going through things like another divorce, leading them to overdose and going to jail. Now you have to pay for bail. So stop it. Treat your child better, so you don't have to communicate with them through a letter. And this way, they won't end up in the school to prison pipeline.
Welcome back to Generation Teen on School to Prison Pipeline. I'm your host, Addison Rose. I am a senior at Episcopal High School in Alexandria, Virginia, and I am the youth mayor of the District of Columbia. Back with me are MJT Excel host and panelists, Joelle Slewion and Isaiah Fields, and this is segment 2, the effects of school to prison pipeline. Our guest panelists are Mark Thompson, national civil rights activist, Dr. Stanley Andrisse, scientist and advocate for the incarcerated, and Jordyn Allen, president of the Howard University Student Government Association. Panelists, one of the effects of school to prison pipeline is that youth become homeless and get into trouble, or they end up joining a gang through peer pressure, and some turn to prostitution. What role does school to prison pipeline play in these areas?
Kids, again, generally become disenfranchised and marginalized if there's the slightest bit of difference in what they look like or what their peers look like or what their activities are and what their peers. It's very important at you all's ages. Your self-esteem is that big and you're looking for that constant, consistent validation. If you don't receive that from healthy, sustainable adults and peers within your age group, then you go looking for it for someplace else. And that's generally how you end up in these antisocial behaviors. You're looking for validation. So you'll try to align yourself with individuals that you feel are cool, individuals that you feel are doing the right thing, when generally, like I said, if you don't have that backbone, that successful individual, that school teacher, that mentor, someone that you can trust, you can easily fall by the wayside.
I think it all boils down to you become what you see. And if you aren't exposed to anything outside of, or any mentors when you were in school at a young age who see something in you, then it changes the trajectory of your life. And I think there's also an emphasis on the people who are in the classroom who are teaching students at a young age, because it really does take, if you come from a community where, let's say, no one believes in you, it's really so important that your teacher is the person that believes in you. And when you have that person who you feel as though has confidence and the ability for you to be successful in the future, it changes the trajectory of your life. So one portion of the job of a teacher is to inspire students to believe that they can become something one day. And so I think that that is also something that contributes to the school to prison pipeline that we don't talk about as much.
What do you think, Reverend Thompson?
It starts at an early age. According to the Department of Education, Black preschool students, these are the most recent numbers, count for 18.2% of total preschool enrollment, but 43.3% or more of school suspensions. If children are being disciplined in this way at this young age, that helps to cancel out hope. 38.2%, 43.3% of suspensions, 38.2% of expulsions. That helps to cancel out hope. And when adults give up on children that young, not to mention the children that come after, from elementary all the way through high school, when we as adults give up on young people in that way, then where are they supposed to go? Where do they end up? And ultimately, children spend more time in school than they do with their parents, because many Black parents have to work, or whoever is raising the children. It might be an aunt or an uncle, it might be a grandparent, whoever is there at school 6, 7, 8 hours a day. That's life. That's very important.
Dr. Stanley, what do you think?
To all the things that were said, and to add to that is really the storytelling that we do around the capabilities of young Black boys and girls, and the need for the Howard Universities of the world and the nation to really help inspire our youth to excel to what we know that they have the capability to do. So if we start changing the narrative around what Black boys and girls can do, as one of the hosts mentioned about sports, that was something in my life where I was basically just told that you either in the streets or you make it in sports. That was the two options for Black boys coming out of the neighborhood that I came out of, and there was no real exposure to the possibilities for people like myself that look like me, to the excellence of folks from communities like mine. So I think helping to change that narrative is upon us, as activists, advocates, professionals, Black professionals, to really help inspire the youth, but to inspire the people that are teaching our youth to help them understand, our possibilities.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Stanley and the rest of the panelists for your input. Panelists, some of our MJT Excel research staff found that youth get into trouble by robbing homes and stores, breaking into cars, and carjacking. According to our studies in July 2022, DC had recorded 3,137 auto thefts. Many of them were jump-ins, which was a 49% increase over the same period in 2019. What's more disturbing is the 141% rise in carjackings separately from auto thefts. 328 carjackings happened through mid-December, which is up from 136 in the same span last year. These findings are disturbing, and we wonder, is there a relationship with carjacking, gangs, and the recent rise in murder rates? Personally, I have seen carjackings become a trend on social media apps like TikTok. It's extremely unfortunate, and it is showing these young people how easy it is to get into trouble. What is your all's thoughts on how these carjackings and murders, all of which, how are they all related? Let's first see what Chief Taylor has to say. Watch this.
So what happens is that you'll have kids that are out on the street that don't have any direction and don't have any activity to participate in, particularly during the pandemic when it was at its highest. They'll jump in a vehicle and it's gone. Another thing that I've recognized also, these TikTok videos. We are so influenced, and even myself, I look at TikTok every day. I stand accused, but you see these challenges that are on TikTok. And I say this to say that these carjackings are not orchestrated efforts. There's not just some group of people that's just going around carjacking. A lot of these kids liken carjackings to video games, this Call of Duty, this Grand Theft Auto, and things of this nature, without realizing that, hey, this is real life. This is your mother that could be carjacked. This is your sister. This is your grandmother. This is you that could possibly be carjacked. Carjacking is more than a property crime. It's actually a physical assault because you have actually threatened someone and taken their vehicles.
So I'm not from DC. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. And so our carjacking is pretty similar, but they have a gang. We do have a gang in the city, and they're called the Kia Boys. And they are known for carjacking. They don't care who you are. You can go to school with them. They gonna take.
That's on TikTok. I saw that on TikTok. That's when I first became aware of it. Again, the social media piece.
That's in St. Louis. That's a group of them. It's a whole gang of them, and they're called the Kia Boys, and they pop cars.
Panelists, lots of youth have bad habits like vaping, smoking weed, abusing alcohol, not listening to parents, selling drugs, and falling to drug addiction. Do you think that these are reasons why youth now, and Black and brown youth in particular, go to prison?
When people are under the influence, it makes you a lot more uninhibited. And I think a lot of these crimes, as far as carjackings, is a crime of opportunity. It sort of presents itself. And if you are more uninhibited because you're pumped up because somebody told you to do it, or you're using drugs, it's more likely to occur.
Reverend Thompson, what are your thoughts?
So I think they all related. I don't think you can separate carjacking from any other type of crime, any other type of violent crime. And why do people jack cars? Because they want to sell them. They want to get the money for them. There are no jobs. There's no place to go. And as we talking, I mean, we're in Washington, D.C. Throughout this whole time, what's happening simultaneously is gentrification in many of our cities. So opportunities are being created for whites to come back into cities like Washington, D.C. and Baltimore and Detroit. People are actively destroying the water system in Jackson, Mississippi, where I was a few days ago, so that it can drive Black residents out and bring white folks in and gentrify Jackson, Mississippi. It ain't just that the water's bad. There's a master plan for gentrification there. So there are opportunities created for those who don't look like us but not enough opportunities created for us. And that is one of the factors when it comes to crime.
Mr. Kevin, I'm so glad that you're able to join us. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and then touch on the issue?
Hi, everybody. My name is Kevin Miles. I am the Deputy Director of Strategy and Policy for the Southern Poverty Law Center's Learning for Justice Department. I do want to say I agree with what Reverend Mark Thompson just talked about, because I think that, you are correct in the question that those things are reasons why people end up going to prison. But I think that it would be a mistake to consider those the cause and going to prison the effect. It's more appropriate to look at those criminal behaviors as the effect, and the cause of that effect is the chronic underinvestment in our community, the chronic underinvestment in our school system, the over-policing of our communities. There are a number of issues, the absence of opportunities, even when Professor Andrisse was talking about when he was growing up, the idea that the only options that were available were you're going to be in the streets or you're going to play sports. That belief and the fact that that belief system persists in our community because we don't have the exposure that gives us the awareness of all of these other opportunities. We don't have the ability to see all of the other things that we can be on a day-to-day basis. And so many of us, when we become successful, the first thing that we want to do is pack up our stuff and move out of the community and rob those children of that type of an example. That is the cause. The criminal behavior that comes from a lack of being able to perceive a future is the effect. And then the next step is those people become criminalized and end up incarcerated.
Thank you, Mr. Miles. Panelists, is there a relationship between ghost guns and murders? And if so, can you tell us why and how ghost guns are getting into the hands of young people?
There's a direct correlation between the acquisition of these ghost guns and murders of our young Black men. As far as how they're getting them, I mean, it's very simple. And because of the fact that they're unregulated, ghost guns don't have any way for you to trace them. They could be obtained through a variety of mechanisms. Ghost guns have been the bane of our existence for quite some time now. And like I said, because of the untraceable factor of them, ghost guns in the hands of the wrong people are often result in tragic occurrences, as your statistics testify to.
The real and what we got to say the word, and I haven't really heard the word necessarily, if I recall this, it's systemic racism. So all those things that Reverend mentioned, that Mr. Miles mentions, are components of systemic racism in our nation and in our world. And so that is really it's because the youth are committing crimes such as carjackings and such, because as you mentioned, they're trying to get money because of the lack of opportunities. Why do we have the lack of opportunities? Because the historical and systemic racism that is part of our country, and how there's been intentional disinvestment in those communities to rid them of those opportunities, except for to hustle and to steal cars. And then, the effect is to move into the criminal legal system. So I just wanted to speak the word of what we're talking about and it's institutional and systemic racism.
Yes, and I think it's so important to address that these ghost guns are really being brought out because they don't want to have their name associated with these guns. They plan to do clearly extremely bad things in these communities. They feel as though it's their only option. So they do resort to unfortunate weapons like ghost guns. Joelle and Isaiah, what do you all think?
I feel like ghost guns being brought into the community can really be caused by ourselves sometimes. I feel like a lot of this is promoted on the media, and it makes kids think it's okay when it's really not.
Yes.
I agree as well, knowing that television is a format of structure for people to look at. And the more we portray ourselves as people who would do this, the more kids can be influenced to think, oh, this is okay, I see it on TV, let me replicate this in life, which is not what anybody should be doing. And needless to say, ghost guns are very easy to maintain and keep. Since there's no tracking label and it's all made on a 3D printer, people can basically buy these illicit items and use them to carry out very detrimental purposes, which really harms the Black community's growth and keeps us at a maintained level of this is the community that's violent and has corruption and will look like other crap to certain people. So that's what I think.
Yes, I agree. And it's extremely unfortunate that a lot of these are kids that are getting their hands on these ghost guns because of the adults who have chosen this way of life. So they are pulling these kids in with them. And these kids are feeling as though this is their only route. This is the only way they are going to make it out, is by doing what they are told to do, doing what they feel is necessary, in what they would call trapping. You know, let's watch this special message now.
I can't figure out why I'm in school, trying to follow the golden rule. There's nothing here for me. I feel comfortable where I grew up, blew up. No point in staying where I'm not wanted. Drugs help me cope with school and stress, to take my mind off all this mess. But school is mainly just a waste of time, another dollar, another dime. The only thing that kept me there were my friends. Now they're in a prison cell or dead. Nothing left for me to do but shed a tear and just drop out. The school to prison pipeline wins again.
Welcome back to Generation Teen on the School to Prison Pipeline. I'm your host, Isaiah Fields. I'm a junior at McKinley Tech High School in DC, and my focus at school is digital media. As a career, I'd love to be a late night talk show host, so this program helps me get there at that point. So this is segment 3, the solutions to avoid the School to Prison Pipeline. Back with me are NJTXL host and panelists Addison Rose and Joel Slewion, and guest panelists Roach Brown, WPFW FM radio host, Mark Thompson, civil rights activist, and Dr. Stanley Andrisse, scientist and advocate for the incarcerated, Kevin Miles from the Southern Poverty Law Center, and Jordyn Allen, the president of the Howard University Student Government Association. Ms. Allen, do you have any final words?
Just briefly, I want to thank you guys for including, the college perspective in this conversation. I think it's important that we have discussions about how we can dissolve the current school to prison pipeline to ensure that, everybody is getting equal opportunity to reach their highest level of success. So thank you guys for having me, and thank you for this thoughtful conversation.
Panelists, our NJTXL researchers have found that solutions to avoid the school to prison pipeline are to find ways to enjoy school and home, get proper counseling, and utilize more social workers and mental health professionals. Let's look at the number of those incarcerated who also have mental health issues. According to the American Psychological Association, 64% of incarcerated individuals in jail, 54% of incarcerated individuals in state prison, and 45% of individuals in federal prison report mental health concerns. And along with this report, it notes that substance abuse is rampant among incarcerated individuals. These numbers are astounding. According to these figures, mental health is a reason why a lot of inmates are in jail, coupled with substance abuse. Let's watch this video.
So let me start by saying what's widely been used is what's called juvenile justice or restorative justice practice. And I don't know if you're familiar with restorative justice, but they use it in schools quite often. It can be very effective, but the problem is that people don't follow through. There's a lot of follow through that's required for restorative justice. And what happens often in schools is that people that are implementing this have competing priorities, and it sort of falls through the cracks. The other solution I would suggest is what's called universal screening for trauma. So in other words, when there's a referral, that should automatically trigger a screening for trauma. And if you began to address the underlying traumas that are beneath the problem, then you don't lead to things like self-medicating and doing drugs and physical acting out behavior.
Let's look at what Department of Corrections Eric Weaver had to say.
I did the whole thing. And was an honor roll student, always made good grades in school, but got made fun of. Well, that wasn't cool. I didn't get the respect or the attention because of that. So once I started being bad, getting in trouble, getting suspended, my name on the loudspeaker, all the girls started liking me, all the guys wanted to come hang with me. And I gravitated to that as was mentioned that we want to be validated. So that made me get in more trouble. I wanted to be even badder. I wanted to be the baddest. And what ended up happening, I ended up going to the juvenile facilities down Oak Hill or Cedar North. And everybody that followed that path did the same thing. And then we graduated and went to real prison. I went to prison when I was 17 years old, and I did 22 years because I wanted to be cool and bad and, not go to school. I ended up spending 22 years of my life. And it wasn't until I got into prison that I really found myself back again and went and got my GED while I was in prison. I got 2 college degrees and all that stuff. But, I took that path because at the time I thought being cool was more of a acceptable thing. And as Problem Child talked about, people realize once they get put in those situations that wasn't really the life they wanted to live. And to even go full circle where I'm at right now, I now work at the same jail that I once was locked up at. I'm in DC jail right now working here. And I once was one of the people that was locked up here.
Mr. Myers, what are your thoughts?
When you look at schools that have a student population that is overwhelmingly Black, and by overwhelmingly I say schools that have a student population that is at least 75% Black, which is not very rare, believe it or not, the majority of those schools, greater than 50% of them, have more security officers than they actually have counseling resources. In fact, there is a very distinct lack of counseling resources in our communities as a whole. And the schools should be one of those areas where communities have access to counseling resources, because at least in their construction, they are intended to have guidance counselors and social workers and whatnot who work there. However, school districts, like I say, that serve majority Black student populations often find themselves with too many students, too cash strapped, because we are basing part of our school funding on property taxes. So we end up not having those counseling resources and doubling down on the security staff that we pump into the schools to deal with the disciplinary issues that come from the fact that we don't have those counseling resources. A lot of the things that we see, and this goes all the way from childhood in school all the way through adulthood. A lot of the problems that we see in our community come from the fact that, sometimes we as a community need help and we don't have options to turn to.
Mr. Brown, are you astounded about these figures as I am? Please respond.
No, I'm not astounded about these figures. In fact, I report on this almost every week on that radio show. It's amazing. We all know what the problem is. It's systemic racism. They did a study when they come up with projects where everybody lived in the Black community in the project. That was the reason why they called it a project. It was a project, and they wanted to see how can people survive or live stacked on top of each other all the way up to multiple floors. And they knew that people turn on each other. And man, these figures, they're not even accurate. I was in prison. They're 30 years and 4 months on installment plan. I see people all day long in prison, out of prison. And the key, I think, to some of this is concentrate all the efforts onto the school. If the kids spend 6 hours a day in school, and they got all kinds of social, economic issues, family issues, domestic violence issues, etc., economical issues, focus all the resources. We've been meeting with men and women they did 30, 40, 50 years in prison. I come out of Lorton, and they had the most successful educational program in the country. 275 men came out every day and went to college, to UDC, and received their degrees. Then Congress come by and kill out the Pell Grant program. It's all about economics and politics and what we call politricks. Man, we're talking about this stuff 40, 50 years, and we still ain't made no advancement. And our kids are dying. And I believe that we should use all hands on deck. Grandmothers are not included. Grandparents are not included. The only people that I know that can reach most of these kids are the grandmothers and the grandfathers. They're not listening to the parents because the parents ain't there. They locked up on probation or on drugs or whatever. People, they are killing us. Our kids are getting locked up as 5 years old, handcuffed, put in jail, and they tell you that you can't use a juvenile record for an arrest. They use whatever they want to use to lock us up, to lock our kids up. And everybody listening, I don't care who you are. Everybody need to do something. Our lives are at stake, our futures are at stake, and our kids have been eliminated. And we sitting there just talking. Let's do something and get everybody involved.
It's important to be active and ensure that your community can grow. And Addison, what's your impression as the youth mayor for DC?
Yes, I really just want to build off of Mr. Brown's thoughts and opinions. I totally agree. We need to be taking more action. In our generation, Gen Z has proved that when we come out and show out in numbers, it truly does do something. We did this with the issue around George Floyd and how our police are attacking us at alarming rates. And it is imperative that we start getting in the streets, that we start demanding our voices are heard around these issues. I mean, they're not paying our youth any attention, and especially our young Black and brown youth who continue to go down the same cycle of these bad habits and going into non-existent careers. We need to be putting more resources into them. We need to be way more helpful, and we need to just truly do more and show them more attention. So thank you, Mr. Brown, for your thoughts. We do need to start doing something, and we need to start doing something fast.
After seeing numbers that high, I feel like after thinking to myself, they should be getting help and they shouldn't be in prison. And I think it's important that we take a deeper look in those cases when they're coming out of high school or when they're younger, so that when they're adults, they don't have to deal with the full punishment of dealing with mental issues and committing bad crimes.
Panelists, let's talk about the police department. Can we use the police department to curtail gang development by creating alternative outlets for youth, like vocational training, and increase the number of recreational facilities that are already out there? Let's watch this video.
It's not about how many people that we lock up. Yeah, we got to lock up some bad people. That has to happen because there are people who make our communities unsafe. But aside from that, it is not my intent to add to the school to prison pipeline for, every little thing that some young person does, introducing them into the criminal justice systems.
I absolutely agree with what Chief Conte said. So the last resort, again, is to put a juvenile in the criminal justice system. However, as he stated before, some folks need to be arrested. The moment that you pick up a gun, the moment that you commit a violent crime, the moment that you commit an act that has an effect on someone else, you need to be sat down for a little bit. To coin a phrase from him, you need to be sat down and you need to reevaluate on your life as it is at this point. To help assist with that, I mentioned, of course, that I am in charge of our Youth and Family Services Division. We have developed certain grant-funded programs to address, to be able to address certain age groups as far as building self-esteem, providing various resources, exposing children to positive situations, assisting with college preparation and things of that nature. One is Youth Creating Change, where we typically get kids from the ages of 13 to 15 and instill these types of thoughts in their minds, and also the exposure to life outside of the 10-block radius of where you live. And another one is called Reaching New Heights. Basically addresses the same thing, but from a younger level.
When I was growing up, we had a lot of recreational centers and after school programs. Like, it was heavy in St. Louis. And I don't know or think that that's a big thing with this generation. Like, yeah, you got football, basketball, but like we used to have like reading clubs, like study clubs and things like that y'all don't even have no more. So a lot of y'all just like leave school and go on the street. So I feel like if we bring that back into the community with the rec centers and actually implement programs for the kids, like after school, to get off the streets, everything will go back to how it was.
I would encourage young people to meet where there are a lot of places where young people are currently meeting, particularly to address mental health issues. I believe at Thurgood Marshall, there's the Young Women's Project. There's a group called Black Swan. There's the DC Public Schools Youth Ambassador Mental Health Program. So these places already exist. You don't have to invent them yourselves. Go there, see what they're doing, talk up, because that's the platform where you can elevate your voice. You can tell us how you want to receive your services, how you receive your communications. You know, what are your issues and what needs to be addressed, where we're making progress, where we're falling down, where we need to do more.
Amira, so hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. So your father is in prison, but please tell us more about you. So what school you go to and what grade you in?
I'm a ninth grader and I currently attend McKinley Tech High School.
I go there too, you know, go Trainers and everything. So what is the status of your father?
My father is currently in maximum security prison, all the way out Kentucky. His facility is called Big Sandy, and he's been incarcerated for about 13 years now.
What's he in for?
My dad was involved with a second-degree murder charge. He was wrongfully accused for it, and he also got charged for an unregistered illegal pistol.
So can you tell us about your increase for prison wages campaign?
Yes, I believe that prisoners should get paid more for their hard work in prison. Did you know that prisoners get paid from 17 cents up to $2 an hour? That's not good at all. Just because they're inmates and they've made mistakes doesn't mean that they should be treated any less human. They should get paid more. They still have responsibilities to take care of. And when they come out of prison, they're gonna have pensions in their pockets.
So what's it like not having a father at home?
At times it could be hard, and it will put me down and make me lose confidence. And sometimes I will look and see how people have a normal home and their family is full of siblings and a dad when I just go home to my mom. And that's all I have to depend on. My father tries the best he can, but it's still not the same.
So what can you tell other kids who have the same problem of not having a father or mom at home?
I would say to use your voice. Everybody's opinion matters. And if you help us advocate for these prisoners that are wrongfully treated like they're not humans, you could help us make a difference. So use your voice and don't be scared.
I agree with you very much. I see Mr. Brown's clapping you up. And Amira, thanks for coming on the show.
Yes,
Thank
we
you for
truly
having
appreciate you.
Thank you, Amir.
I will be right back for final thoughts and Q&A.
Welcome to segment 4, final thoughts and the Q&A, the questions and answers segment. I'm back as your host, Joel Slewion, and here with me are my MJTXL hosts, Addison Rose and Isaiah Fields. And guest panelists, Roach Brown, Mark Thompson, Dr. Stanley Andrisse, Kevin Miles from the Southern Poverty Law Center, and Jordyn Allen. Panelists, we have talked about the causes, effects, and solutions to school to prison pipeline. I put together final questions that I want us all to answer. The first question is, what's a good solution to stop you from running away from home because of abusive parents? Mr. Brown, do you have anything to say?
Yes, one of the things is, again, having the whole community. If I think Mark or somebody said it, kids spend 6-7 hours in school and they come in with all kinds of problems. So we need to have flood resources of social workers and community workers, conflict resolutions into that community so the kid can have somebody to relate with.
Dr. Stanley?
We need more resources and opportunities. I mean, why is the kid even thinking about running away? Because things are difficult and there's a lack of opportunities and resources and access to things that, you know, would help them not want to do that. So we need to pump more, you know, mentors, community health workers, social workers, advocates. We need more investment. We need to stop the, you know, intentional and systematic divestment from these communities and just pump more resources and opportunities.
Thank you.
Question 2, panelists, we know that the use of drugs and alcohol is very serious among our youth. How can we get more drug and alcohol education programs for students in high school who use and are addicted, and the same mandatory programs for those in prison? Reverend Thompson, do you have any thoughts on this issue?
So I think that the school systems, if kids are captive in the classroom for 7 hours a day, they need to be exposed to all of the realities of everything they're discussing. Now, Roach talked about involving grandparents. I was saying before you came on, Roach, that you a grandparent now, Roach. So
I'm a great grandparent. Great.
So a lot of these grandparents now have been incarcerated. And maybe we do need to listen to some of them about their experiences and how their lives would be different, or they would have a different type of life if they could have a do-over. So the school system has to adjust in that regard.
To the time.
And we cannot, and Kevin is an expert on this, we cannot just lay back and surrender to others outside of our community who are trying to influence the direction and the curriculum of our school system. That's happening right now. If we don't make it a priority, and our enemies are making it a priority, we're going to continue to be caught up in this vicious cycle.
Our system is not designed to help folks in our community. Our system is designed to deal with people after the effects of living in a broken system become manifest, right? So we don't provide the resources on the front end to help families become healthy. We just create systems to punish the people when that unhealthy behavior becomes obvious. It makes no sense to put 15 security officers in schools to arrest kids and no counselors to deal with their issues before they get arrested.
We need to focus everything in the school. Wherever the kids spend all their time, focus all resources. And I want to thank you for having Amir on. She was on that radio show 2 years ago, and she said that her father is in Big Sandy, and she wanted one day just to spend with her dad. We called the Federal Bureau of Prisons and said, why don't you have family days where the daughters and the kids can spend all day long with their moms and dad? You don't tell us how to run this institution. It ain't about telling them how to run the institution. It's about connecting and keeping families tight.
Dr. Stanley, what would you tell kids who are currently involved in criminal acts?
I would say we just need to, again, provide more resources and opportunities and help change the narrative. So, why is that kid? We've been really focusing on as if, there's not powers impinging on why people even pick up the pistol or pick up the bag to go sell some drugs. We really need to be focusing on that even before the act of doing the crime. There's these systems in play that make it more appealing, more accessible to do the crime than to, see a different path. So, what I would say is that this is not the end for you. This is not who you are. I know that you feel that you need to do this particular act, but in often cases you don't. And if you do the act, it's not the end for you. There's people out here like me and our organization that are willing to help, make you whole and feel human again, which the system, of course, strips away from us.
Thanks, Dr. Stanley. Student hosts, what are your final thoughts?
Well, I would like to first thank you all for being here. And truly my final thoughts on all of this is that we need to putting more time, effort, and resources into our youth. We need to show them that they do have a future, regardless of if their parents, loved ones, or family members went to college, they went to school, whether or not they took on real corporate jobs, helping them understand that their future is not determined based on the people that they are around. We need to start reaching into these communities, talking to students, showing them that they are capable. Whether it's they enjoy computer science, they enjoy dancing, they enjoy science. There is so much that we could be doing to help these students, helping them understand that they are not subject to where they are from, subject to the people that are around them. They have a future, and it is possible for them to accomplish big things, no matter where they are from, what the setting around them is like. And so I just want to say to all of those young people watching, you have a voice and you are capable of so much more than you think.
My final comments is that to an extent, there is no ill will against anybody in this comment, but your life is what you make of it. So if you think, oh, I'm from the hood, I can't amount to anything, if that's what you choose to do with your life, that's what you choose. But there are other options, there are other venues to do. There's good from the hood and there's good from everywhere, but you need to, as a person who lives in a place that is not really the best place to live right now, I have to make the best of what I do every day. And with stuff like this, there are many programs like this or any other thing that you can do to get yourself on the right path to success, whether that be sports. It doesn't have to be sports. It can be STEM-based, community service, or anything. There's always an opportunity for you to better yourself as a person, and you always should take the opportunity no matter what. Saying no to everything can really be a downfall in anybody's life.
Thanks for joining Generation Teen on School to Prison Pipeline. I'm your host, Joel Slewion.
Addison Rose.
And Isaiah Fields. Stay concerned.
Stay woke, and most importantly,
stop the school to prison pipeline.
The more blood that spreads, the more tears I shed. The more kids that die, the more families that cry. And I wonder why I try to understand the underhanded activities and proclivities of a society not meant for me to be free to see the destiny my ancestors dreamed for me. But as the great Martin Luther King said, I have a dream. Because I believe that dreams do come true, I knew that I was destined to fulfill my ancestral desires to thrive, survive, and stay alive and be me. In this society built to deny me an education, showing me the relationship from school to prison.